Just before Christmas, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson held a news conference to discourage large holiday gatherings. It was the same sort of public health caution made by prime ministers, presidents, and governors around the world. Big family Christmas gatherings and holiday parties were a chance to infect many people with the potentially deadly disease simultaneously. A few hours of fun wasn't worth the risk, Johnson said. As the BBC reported it, Johnson was accompanied in his press conference by Professor Chris Whitty, England's equivalent of Anthony Fauci. In emphasizing Johnson's message, Whitty said something terribly wise concerning the pandemic and so many other things in government and life. He said, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's sensible in any way. It was a simple common sense comment, but so incredibly important and well expressed that I've started thinking of it as Whitty's law. Just because you can do something doesn't mean it's sensible in any way. His application of Whitty's law to COVID-19 was obvious and sage, but think about how many different ways it applies outside the parameters of the pandemic. I can try to juggle knives. I own knives, and there's no one in my household with the authority to make me not juggle knives. But I don't juggle knives. It's dangerous. I can't juggle balls of yarn. And if I were to pull the steak knives out with that in mind, I just end up in the minor emergency clinic. Juggling knives isn't sensible in any way. Whitty's law is something that people in government power positions should particularly keep in mind. The Oklahoma legislature can take over the governance of the Oklahoma and Tulsa County health departments. It's within the constitutional authority of lawmakers, but that doesn't make it sensible in any way. It would be reneging on a long-standing tacit agreement with the property taxpayers in the state's two largest metropolitan areas that exchanges health department independence for local funding. That deal makes the state's limited health funding go further in rural areas. The legislature can pass resolutions challenging the executive orders of President Joe Biden, but that doesn't make it sensible in any way. The US and Oklahoma Constitution make it clear that federal authority is superior to state law and resolutions. The Constitution, federal laws passed under it, and ratified treaties are the supreme law of the land. Biden's executive orders might rankle lawmakers politically, and they strike me as the wrong way to make federal policy with any permanence, but they're all drawn up in a way that gives them the supremacy shield of federal law. State legislative resolutions to the contrary aren't worth the paper they're written on. They waste time and effort and make the state look dim to the rest of the nation. At the same time, they further alienate the state from the people who make national policy and funding decisions. They aren't sensible in any way. The legislature can design complicated tax credit programs to benefit private schools, the equivalent of a voucher system through scholarships and tax giveaways. The US and Oklahoma Supreme Courts have made it clear enough that such an allocation is within legislative authority, but that doesn't make it sensible in any way. It reduces the funding available to public schools for the many and uses tax money to support private and parochial educations for the few. That increases the discontent of teachers, makes their jobs harder, and undermines something we should all hold dear, public education. There are plenty of other objections to the idea, but that alone makes it wrong and as a matter of ethical government. I could go on and on about things that those in power can do, and at the moment appear to be on the cusp of actually doing, but that don't make sense in any way. But I'll end with this one. The legislature can order the nation's official motto, "In God We Trust," displayed on every state building. It stretches my personal sense of the First Amendment ban on an establishment of religion, but artfully drawn, it probably falls within legislative prerogatives as currently interpreted by the US Supreme Court. But that doesn't make it sensible in any way. Paying for all those signs on all those buildings isn't the most pressing funding need in the state, nor does having "In God We Trust" nailed on the facade of the penitentiary's garden shed seem like an appropriate way to honor the divine. It's a waste of time and authority. It's insensible in just about every way. If we're going to go around hammering signs on walls instead of the nation's motto, I'd suggest Whitty's law, at least on the legislators' offices.